If you are an Australian retailer, particularly a small to medium-sized retailer, although you large retailers don't be too cocky confident, unfortunately, I have some very bad news. The end of Australian retail is near. So, to sum up very quickly, for those of you who don't want to listen to the end of the podcast, if you think that your turnover and your operating performance of your business has been declining over the past few years, well, I'm telling you that unfortunately things really aren't going to get better. I would suggest to you, and I'm talking very generally here because I don't know every single individual's business circumstance, but by far the majority, most of you, like 9 out of 10 of you who are running small to medium-sized retail businesses, you should seriously consider packing your bags, pulling out your investment and starting afresh in another type of business. That is my message to you. If you think that the situation is going to improve, then unfortunately you're going to be very disappointed. If you have seen your business turnover declining over the past 3 to 1 year, the trend is just going to continue. So what do you do? Well, once again, I would just pack my bags and call it quits. I know how difficult that may be because I'm a business owner myself, and I know that the business can be your baby. You've invested your time, your energies, your money, a lot of things into it, and so walking away from it is obviously something that you don't want to do. It's a pride thing, it's an honor thing, it's also, it's just not good. It's just not good to do. But sometimes it's important to take one step back in order to be able to take 2 steps forward. So that's basically the scenario that I want to present to you. Now, there are 2 main reasons why. These reasons are reasons which will be clear to you, which will make a lot of sense, and which I will prove to you are going to be reasons that will continue to exist but will get a lot worse when it comes to you and your business. Now, at the center of all this is the internet. The internet has created absolute chaos when it comes to Australian retail. Look, maybe chaos is not the right word, a revolution. And this revolution has come from 2 fronts. Now, the most obvious front is the fact that consumers through the internet are able to access retailers on a global scale now, which they were not able to do before. So you, as the retailer, you used to compete with your local competitors in the local area or maybe in the surrounding suburbs. They were your competitors, so you might have had 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 different competitors depending obviously what type of business you ran. Now, unfortunately for you, you've got tens of thousands of competitors who are based around the globe, because if somebody wants to purchase sneakers, or if somebody wants to purchase an action camera, or if somebody wants to purchase a microphone, or if somebody wants to purchase something else, they don't necessarily have to buy it from you. They don't necessarily have to buy it from somebody in the next suburb. They can just as easily purchase it overseas and get it shipped to them, most often cheaper, at a cheaper cost than it would be the case if they bought it locally. So that's a fact. We know that. You know that. I know that. And if you think that that is the only issue, then unfortunately you are wrong, because there is another less visible issue, which is actually visible if you open your eyes, and that is the amount of foot traffic on the streets. I'm telling you to reflect and to have a think about the amount of foot traffic that you see outside your shop today. Compare it to last year, compare it to 5 years ago, compare it to 10 years ago. I'm not talking about retailers who are in large shopping centres. I don't know the exact trend there. I'm assuming probably that there is probably a similar number than what there used to be, although there might be less. But I'm talking particularly on this in the strip shopping areas, on the streets, where you've got your local bank, where you've got the local post office, where you've got your local shops, and so, you know, the supermarkets and so forth. I'm talking there, and I know that the foot traffic has decreased considerably in those areas over the past decade and a little bit longer, and I'll tell you why in a second. But before I do that, quite clearly you will understand that the less foot traffic there is, then the less potential customers there are. And if there are less potential customers, then obviously you're going to be making less sales. Because if you had 1,000 people walking past your shop 20 years ago, well, that's 1,000 people your shop was exposed to. Now, if that now decreased to 500 5 years ago, then that's obviously half of your potential customers gone. And then if you've got 100 people coming around, you know, walking by your shop today, well, that's obviously 1/10 of the amount of customers, potential customers that you have compared to 10 years ago. So quite clearly your exposure to customers is decreasing, the potential number of customers you've got is less, and obviously that's going to affect your sales. Now you might be thinking, well, how the hell do you know, buddy? Where did you get all this from? Or you might be thinking, hey, actually you are right. How did you know? Well, it's very easy how I know. Because I know about consumer behavior. And I'm going to show you how you are an example of what I'm talking about. Let's compare you now, today, to you 15 years ago. Maybe 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, depending how old you are. Now I'm going to give you just 3 examples. 3 really simple examples. Banking. Remember in the past how you used to do your banking? I certainly do. I had to go to the branch. Why? Well, because there was no other option. Internet banking wasn't around, and when it was, in the first few years, well, I wasn't a real fan of it. I didn't trust it, you know, it was internet banking, you know. Remember when the internet was just taking off, then there was issues about doing online purchases and scams and security and this and that. And it was also a considerable change to our habits. And some people change habits sooner, other people change their habits a little bit, takes them a little bit longer. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is that internet banking just wasn't a main feature of banking the further back that we go. That meant that we all had to go to the bank physically ourselves to pay for bills, to deposit checks, to make payments, to take money out, and so forth. Now, we had to do that obviously during banking hours. Banking hours were business hours. So the fact that we needed to do our banking forced us to go onto the streets during business hours. Because we were on the streets already, because we had to do our banking, well then whilst we were there, well, we might have purchased, gone to the supermarket, or we might have maybe done some shopping, or bought this or bought that, or maybe got some hot food, because we were out there anyway. Add to that your bills. Remember how you used to pay your bills? You would have either paid your bills at the bank, you might have gone to the post office. The further back we go, the more obvious that was. Obviously 30 years ago, well, there was no other option. There was no internet. So, you know, so basically banking had to be done at the bank. Paying for your bills had to be done either, well, by sending a check out, going to the post office, or maybe doing it at the post office, and so forth. Once again, you and I, we were forced out of our homes, out of our businesses, to go into the street, because at the very least we needed to pay our bills, we needed to do our banking. Whilst we were there, like I said, we did other stuff anyway, such as just go shopping. I mean, we're there anyway, we might as well do it. And then we come back home and then everything is sorted. Now compare it today. How often do you go to the post office today? How often do you physically pay your bills? How often do you physically do your banking? By physically, I mean actually in person, compared to online. Now, practically all my bills are paid online. Why? Well, because I can do that. I don't want to go to the bank or to the post office anymore because I don't want to drive my car in traffic, which is worse than it used to be because there are more cars on the road. I don't want to pay more for my parking than I used to pay because the parking fees have gone up. And I don't want to use my car as much because that means my petrol bill is going to be higher because petrol today costs more than it did in the past. I prefer to stay at home if I've got this option, and I certainly have that option. I can pay certain bills, well, in fact, I can pay all my bills over the internet. I can do pretty much most of my banking over the internet. As a result, I no longer have to go out onto the streets during business hours. Because I don't do that, I don't have to do that, I'm not forced, well, I'm not on the streets during business hours. If I'm not on the streets during business hours, I then don't get to be exposed to different shops. I don't get to buy as many things as I potentially would in the past. Now you might be thinking, well, what about grocery shopping? Well, what about it? Yeah, I do it, but I don't do it during business hours. Why? Because it's more convenient for me to do it at 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night or even midnight, because shops today are open, grocery shops like large shops are open either 24 hours or open until midnight. This is something which wasn't the case 10, 15, 20 years ago. So if I'm not out on the street during business hours as I used to be in the past because I had to do like normal things like paying bills or just doing the banking, I'm at home. And therefore, I don't need to go to the supermarket during business hours, and so I don't. I do it at midnight or at 10 o'clock at night because there's more parking available, there are less people in the queue, and just in the supermarket there are just less people. It's more convenient, I can do it a lot quicker, I don't have to wait in line, and so that's when I do it. Okay, but the problem is that most small to medium-sized businesses are closed at 10 o'clock at night or at midnight. So, yes, I still do my banking, yes, I still pay all my bills, yes, I do my grocery shopping, but I don't do a lot of the other stuff. Like buying on impulse, like I might have done in the past because I was out on the streets anyway. So, the change in consumer behavior as a result of these crucial lifestyle changes means that there is less foot traffic on the streets. There is less foot traffic in the shopping precincts. And as a result, you are finding that you have less customers because there are less customers on the street. And this situation, as you can imagine, is not going to improve because supermarkets are going to be either open the same hours that they're open now, or maybe more of them will be open for 24 hours, which means there'll be a higher likelihood that people will do their grocery shopping after business hours. And quite clearly, internet banking is not going to contract, it's only going to expand. And same with paying for other things that you pay. These things will not change. I mean, this isn't seasonal. So there will not be more foot traffic on the streets during business hours because there's just no reason for that to be the case. Now, if you throw in the fact that consumers are now less resistant to doing online shopping, there's an increasing likelihood that they're going to be purchasing stuff from interstate or from overseas. And this situation is not going to change in your favour. They're only going to get worse. And the problem with having to compete against retailers on a global scale means that not only do you need to compete on price, but you also have to compete on stock quantity. Because if I want to purchase an action camera, and if I've got the global market at my disposal, I can access 30 or 40 different brands of action cameras. As an example, I use action cameras. Now, how many action cameras do you stock? Well, if you stock 5 or 7 or 8 or 10 brands, that is really good, actually. That's really good. Yeah, but not 30. And it might be that the action camera which I want is an action camera that you don't have. But if you do have it, say, because you might, then why should I pay an X amount of dollars for the same action camera which I can purchase overseas at maybe X minus 30% or 40% or 25%? I mean, I'm going to get it at my place anyway. I'm going to get the same product. What difference does it make? Apart from the fact that I might have to wait for a week or two. But if I can save $50 or $100 or $200, well, geez, I'll wait, particularly if it's not something that's urgent. So if you are a clothing retailer, particularly shoes or something like that, which can be purchased online quite often, or if you're a book retailer, or if you're an electronics retailer, or if you're a retailer actually of many different things, health products, I mean, these things can be just as easily purchased from other parts of the country, just like other parts of the world. So it is just a really tough environment, which is just not going to get better. It's not going to get any better. And I just want you to consider what I'm saying and just reflect. Just reflect on your business's performance and just reflect on the things that I have said and how that is going to impact your business. And if you were wondering, why is your business underperforming? Why is your turnover decreasing? What can you do about it? Well, the reality is really not much. Based on what I said, there's just not much. Because it means that you're going to have to force all these people who used to be on the streets, you're going to have to force them back onto the streets. How are you going to do it? Well, I don't know. You're not. You can't. How are you going to compete better against international competitors who got 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 times as many brands or products as you have? Well, you're going to have to expand your business 50 times over. Can you do that? Probably not. So, unfortunately, the bad news is retail has got a very bleak future, but the good news is that you can still get out while you can and just start all over. There are heaps of other opportunities out there. There are other businesses which you can get into. And if you want some assistance, look, just give me a call here at the Business Crew, and I'll be more than happy to talk to you and see what we can organise for you. In the meantime, good luck, and just please think about what I've been saying.